Kavita Jaiswal, an eminent artist and exponent of contemporary abstract expressionism, began her journey as an artist in the 1980s. She is a recipient of the Distinguished Achievements Award by the Lalit Kala Academy of India, the National Fellowship for Fine Art by the Ministry of Culture, Government of India, and the Charles Wallace India Trust Award from British Council. Her works are found in several collections such as the NGMA, New Delhi, the British Museum, London, the Ibrahim Alkazi Collection at Art Heritage, and the Kiran Nadar Museum, New Delhi. Hello and welcome to Chaibrary. Today we have with us eminent abstract artist Kavita Jaiswal. Kavita ma'am, welcome to Chaibrary, and we love that you are here today and we could converse with you.
Thank you so much, Lubna. Thank you.
So, ma'am, you are a multi-dimensional artist in practicing abstract expressionism for almost 4 decades for now. But you have a very unique signature that you have, and it doesn't conform to any particular style in this genre, and doesn't seem to be influenced by anybody, but it just seems to be very intuitive and coming from within. So, give an idea about how this all came about in your art.
That's a lovely question, Lubna, because yes, as a young person, I always believed in freedom. And I was given a lot of freedom at home by my parents. My father was in the army, my mother was an academician. Do what you have to do in life. And that one freedom is what I carried forward with myself as an athlete. And then I came into the art world and I went through the entire gamut of doing the recognizable image, the drawing and sketching and as a student.
Right.
And then very early, I kind of wanted to just break away from the surface tension, which was binding the form.
So at that time, were you inspired by any representational artist at that time when you were a student? Was there something that caught your attention? Did you know that time is going to happen? You obviously did not know that movement will happen towards non-representational work.
Not at all. In fact, I was very lost because I had done my English literature and I landed up under the tutelage of Rameshwar Bruta at Triveni Kala Sangam.
Okay.
And so within about 3 months of my learning under him, he said, "Tum roz aa jao aur tum artist ban jao."
Okay.
So I was
Just
like in
that.
shock. Yeah, I was in shock, and I had to also fight my way out at home because of academics.
So you were doing English literature, MA, and while you were also kind of pursuing this side on the side, and then did you decide that you will take that up full time or something?
Yes, in fact, there's a short story to that because when I started my MA, I went through the first semester, and when the second semester exam happened, it was just 20 days away, and I just gave it up and I reached home.
Okay.
And we have 3 sisters. My mother is a PhD and all that happening, and I told her I don't want to study anymore. What do you want to do? I said I want to be an artist and I want to be free. I'm sick of books. I just cannot be bound by anything. She even referred to one of her colleagues, Kapila Vatsayanji at that time, and in the Ministry of Education because she was an educationist. And Kapila ji told her, let her go, let her be an artist, So that was one very big turning point in my life. And so that's how, I got into painting and reached Triveni.
So you did get the support of your family at that point of time?
Totally, yes. My mom and my dad, they gave me a stipend of 700 rupees to begin with, and I was to pay for all my travel and my art material, and also buy the occasional shampoo that I wanted.
Okay. All right, then what happened?
So I joined, and then while I was working, I used to always try to open up the form. Even whether it was the human form, so it went into a metamorphosis stage where the human form was metamorphosed with the rock structures, with tree trunks, etc. And then I went for my residency to Edinburgh Printmakers from the Charles Wallace India Trust Award. And when I reached Edinburgh, this was like my children were young at that time, and this was the first time I actually went out abroad into freedom, which I was alone there. And when I used to walk into the printmaker studio, there used to be a lot of buzzing sound of the rollers and the machines and etc. But when I would work, I would go into a very deep silence. It was like as if you're underwater, and there was this hum. And that's automatically. And I used to wonder what this huge silence and happiness and joy and everything, So that is where my whole touch, the abstraction or the essence started. And that's when I actually started. I did a few etchings there. Some of them were called timepiece because I was also questioning the relevance of time, the linear time, and also started to feel that there is a metaphysical time which is beyond all the time that human beings know of.
I remember that artwork, so that's quite geometric, quite different from your current signature work.
Yeah, so geometrics, yes, because from the human body, because Bruta sir was very human figure,
Right, right.
So I was also like very mesmerized by his forms. But then I said, no, put that away, get into geometrics, because okay, that gave me an anchor. As an abstractionist, it's very difficult when you're younger to just give it up, the recognizable image, how will the public understand my work, this, that.
Right.
But I think I got over it very quickly, and I made one or two of these etchings called Timepiece and the Witch's Brew. And when I was making the Witch's Brew, there were these bubbles coming out of it, and I said, oh, that's freedom, and that's it.
So the freedom that you always looked for,
Yeah.
that was slowly creeping into your art also.
Yeah.
At this point also, let me ask you, there was this set of triptych which is Paleolith or something. Was it before you went to Scotland or after? There were these pretty stout shapes, I would say, which is kind of little bit breaking free. So if you could talk about those,
Yes.
the triptych.
Yeah, that was way before. It was in the early 90s, in fact.
Okay.
And I was working with the charcoal pencil and Conti on paper, and very different from the canvas, which was in Triveni, everyone was working on canvas. And I remember that was a triptych which I did, which was, to do with rock formations and the sedimentations and layers of time on the rock,
Okay.
and the impact of time and the impact of air and water. And in my imagination, there were these little holes in those works where I used to feel the insects live. They create their habitat there. And I called that whole series Paleolith because I felt that it was very primal in its instinct. I felt it was like the Paleolithic age. And then the forms also came out as the
like
tools that were being used, by the human being at that time.
Right.
And this was one of the first works which was bought by Mr. Ibrahim El-Kazi
Oh, really?
for the El-Kazi collection in the early 90s.
Okay.
And of course, my association goes very long way
Very
after
long
that.
way.
Yes.
That we'll come to in details about
Yeah.
that. And also the Paleolith I mentioned because there is something that I see as a referential later on, which we'll come to. So you were in Scotland and Edinburgh, and after that, how did the practice move on?
So
from
I
there?
came back from there, exhibited my work at the British Council in the Queen's Gallery, and called it Silent Moments.
Silent moments.
Yes, because there was a lot of these white on white embossed etchings, along with the geometrics of the Witch's Brew. And there was a work called Musical Melting, where the form was melting into sound. I used to feel that kind of, very ethereal kind of a sound. That again is with Mr. El-Kazi. That was in 2002. And Art Alive Galleries collaborated for that exhibition at the British Council. And then Mr. El-Kazi took me on. And 2005, I had my first solo with him.
Okay.
And that was the breaking point, because that's when he saw that abstraction had entered my work. And he said, write an essay on abstraction. So I said, oh God, now I have to write. Because he used to be very interested in every work, every dot, line, texture, everything. There was a discussion across the table with him, very, very meaningful, very warm and friendly. And then he says, do you think we can call your exhibition Cognizance? Because, I feel now you have begun to understand abstraction. You're cognizant of it. So that's why.
That's
where it started.
interesting. Any particular artwork of that time, that type exhibition that comes to your mind?
Yes, there was one work called Profusion, where actually the form just opened up, and there was this whole plethora of experience I felt came off, onto the, and with a sigh of relief, I found it all over the paper, and it was a triptych, a three-piece one, so that's happened.
So now I want to ask you for, because it's contextual right now what you're saying, that for an artist it is extremely vital that they get nurturing environment, a support of promotion, of guidance, mentoring, and you got that with Art Heritage. Tell us about that experience of yours, because I've seen you with them, and it's a wonderful relationship that you share. So.
Oh yes, it's one of my main relationships with the art world.
Right.
And I was very, very young in the early 90s and in my late 20s. So Mr. El-Kazi started to collect my work from my solo exhibitions, which we used to, as artists, hold ourselves in the Sridharani Gallery. And he and Roshan El-Kazi, his wife, would come across and they would just pick up work. And so that was a beautiful relationship. And now it's just continuing with Amal Alana and Nisar and Tariq also, Tariq Alana. And they're a family which is very different as gallerists, art collectors. They come with a heart and soul. So they not only go into the depths of the art, they go into the artist, they go into the personal side of the artist. They visited my home for dinner, and Tariq recently came again to my home for dinner, and we are friends. They wanted to see where I lived, and I said I have a very humble home. They said, so be it. If you're coming to your house, and you please cook a meal for us. So they make you so comfortable, and yet there is a strong sense of professionalism about them, which is so comforting as an artist, because you know that you stand on very strong ground.
And you're with the right kind of support.
Totally.
That's great. So, Kavita ma'am, how much does your spiritual journey influence your work?
Oh, that's a huge influence, because abstraction is also the essence of the real. It's the spirit, of the recognizable form. And I started to recognize it, feel that silence and the spirit in the early 2000s. But I was not a follower, I was not a seeker, I didn't believe in many things and all that. And slowly it kept pulling me in, As I grew as an artist, I think my spiritual journey was found. And I did one work at the Edinburgh Printmakers, I remember, called Azure. And of course, there are the castles in that, and there's the water body.
It's beautiful work in blue and monochrome,
Yes, and there was a lot of, movement in that, because it was very windy in England, And so that part came in, and then I was feeling the opening up and freedom. And a lot of my textures also got built at that time. The line became sensitive, it became soft, and then also there were these very bold brushstrokes of a flat, big line. So the line also became a very beautiful aspect of my work, and I started to recognize that. I started to also deal with textures, and this particular work also has a part of a lithograph in it.
Okay.
So I started to collage at that stage, which went forward with my work later.
Yes, I can understand what you're saying later on. Part of those came up in your works. So there's an interesting work which I saw, which was, I think, some project you had with Das Mahavidya.
Yes.
And what was that work about? It was a very interesting work in red or in a tone of...
Yeah. So that was a group show which was held with 10 women artists of India. It was done by Ravi Kumar from the Kumar Art Gallery, and he brought out a book. He published a book on all the 10 women artists and their works. It was not something which was thematic at all. It was to do with our own individual journeys, practices. And he asked for 16 works for some reason.
From each of you?
From each of us. And my particular works were called Magical Kingdom.
Magical Kingdom.
Yes, because I used to feel that there was this magic that was happening in my, psychological self. And there were these 16 works which were almost life-size. They were 5 feet by about 3.5 feet. And they were all vertical. Most of them were vertical. And it had the feelings of the body inside, the capillaries and the veins carrying the life force, which I offered. It was not only biological for me, it was also from the divine. The life that was flowing in our veins, So I did the interior of the human body in abstraction, and I also did the interior of the earth in abstraction. So some of the works were called Cocoon and The Groove, and some of the works had the feeling of the Elysium, the feeling of just moving away into the temple on the top of the hill. So that was a beautiful series. This exhibition traveled 4 cities at that time, and we had a great time.
I always love your titles that you give. It just evokes some spirituality, actually, that way. Is this also the time that textures and all started coming into your work more frequently, more?
Yes, in fact, this whole series, The Magical Kingdom, was very textured. And I used to feel the tactile quality. I never wanted to very smoothness in my work, things which I used to find it dead. The oil on canvas I wouldn't deal with,
You never responded to typical oil on canvas?
No, I just wanted the tactile material, things that flowed, which was water-based, etc. And and from here I moved into, as I said, I'd already touched into collage. The Magical Kingdom did not have any collage, whereas in the next exhibition, which was 2011, called No Beginning, No End, here I collaged a lot of my earlier drawings, which I would want to discard and throw away, so I would pull out the nicer parts of it and then suddenly, and then I put them on this blank sheet of paper and I would work around them and add more pieces, and then also a lot of line and texture and paint, and most of the paint was, I was really not touching with the brush, I was dribbling it on,
Okay.
and I was throwing the paint into those works. And No Beginning, No End, as it was called, No Beginning, No End. It was a solo exhibition at the Art Consult.
Right.
And this was when I actually started following the Dalai Lama in Thich Nhat Hanh. And that is when I understood that there is no beginning, no end to our existence. It's only in continuation. Even the physical body takes new forms. As it dies, or we cremate it, or we bury it, it takes another form because the matter is still left right here. And the soul is indestructible. It is totally, it's free, and that is the freedom. And that's what I started to feel
At that time.
experientially at that time. And this was followed by the next exhibition at the Art Heritage in 2014, where I picked up canvas. Till then, my paper was a very strong
medium
and
for
it
you.
still is. And canvas comes in once in a while when I don't know why, but it comes in at the right time when a certain amount of structure is needed, or certain,
Perhaps a transition or
or
something.
a transition, or sometimes, as an artist, you want to also pick up a new medium.
Experiment.
Experiment with. I'd also started a bit of photography at that time. I started to
right.
find my lines, the lines that are the moving lines, which were thick, thin, sensitive, angry sometimes. They would, become a big brush stroke and enclose space, and kind of like an open form was formed with those lines. And I went to the Koila Dev National Park, and I saw the reflections of the babool tree from the boat where I was on this river. And I saw those lines dancing, and I said, oh my God, this looks like my work. But then I said, okay, don't you don't think that you're the original creator, there's the creator up there. And it will look like his work.
It will look like his work. Wonderful, actually.
Yes.
You put it so wonderfully, yes.
So that's how it happened. And No Beginning, No End was a beautiful series, which I still very fond of. And then I went into canvas with 2014. I exhibited at the Art Heritage.
The large canvases that
the
you're
large,
talking about.
huge canvases, and different sizes of canvases, from 1x1 to 6x6 and 5x5. And they were again canvases which were just black on black and white on white, but a lot of tactile texture. And it was a very beautiful moment in my life, because there was a blind school, I think it was a charity exhibition or something, and these children had come from a blind school and they were touching my canvas. And with their eyes closed, this young little boy, I brought tears to my eyes. He was touching it and touching it. He says, "ये दुनिया बनी हुई है क्या, जो हमें नहीं दिखती?"
Wow, look at that.
It gave me the shock of my life, and
Beautiful.
I said, in God's world, there is the presence is there in all of us.
Amazing.
We are not different. We are all one. And that's when I did those canvases.
And
using
see how their perception is. Even without seeing, they can actually say that. And in fact, it's reminding me of a particular quote of Mondrian, Piet Mondrian. He's also an artist who's moved from formalistic, representational to abstract. And he says that do not think abstract is a version of reality. It is the reality that we portray through abstraction. So I think what he said, this is a world that maybe one can't see, but this is something that he could touch it. It's a wonderful, wonderful anecdote, and I think a wonderful inspiration must be.
Yeah.
So these are canvas works that
Yeah.
you're doing, and now I want to also talk about video installations, video art, and you have been practicing that for quite some time.
Yes.
Tell us how that came about, and give us
Yeah.
some examples of the works that you're fond of.
Yeah. So when I was doing these canvases at Art Heritage, Mrs. Alana used to come to the gallery, and just like her father, she was totally interested in my work and every aspect of it.
Wonderful.
And she had been abroad, and I had done a small little bits of video because I was also, I found still photography is still again, and I found the two-dimensional work also still, and I wanted movement and
Movement
sound,
in it.
So I used to start recording with my little camera. I had a automatic one, and recording all this. And then I showed those to her, and she says, I've just come back for something with you. It was quite a coincidence, and she says, I said, what? She brought me a video of another artist at one of the biennales, and she says, Kavita, why don't you just look at it, study it, and see if you want to really formalize this
This medium.
this medium for yourself, because I feel that there are the beginnings of those in you. So I said, fantastic, and I was a little worried about it also because it was very close to the India Art Fair, and she wanted to put it through as a project for that, and it was just 4 months left, and but I don't know if with God's grace and all my heart and soul into it. So I picked up my canvases, I picked up my images from my canvases, I rolled my camera onto and took video of those as spaces on earth,
Right.
and as also metaphysical spaces. And then I had a lot of my videos when I used to be walking and my
yes.
shadow and my feet. So I picked those up. Then I picked up my old drawings which had the Venus system and which had, the textures and stuff.
Right.
Then I took some more videos of the bubul tree and all that. And all that came together on the editing table.
It came together very well.
On the editing table, I sat with my editor, very sweet guy, and he was very sensitive, and every second of that video was guided by me. I said, okay, now can we just move it this way? Can we move it that way? And then all the images, the still and the moving image came together. And then I used all natural sounds in that, the sounds of and I was also spiritual, the Leh Ladakh and, the monks and, the gong and, that kind of the sound reverberating, and the natural sounds of the wind and the water and the glug, glug, glug if you go under the water. So I used and actually recorded all those sounds myself and put them through the videos.
So that's how the video art in your repertoire started.
Yes, this was a set called Causal Nexus, and it was actually shown as the project at the India Art Fair, and it was really successful.
That's great. So now I would like to come to some of the recent works of yours, and last 2-3 years, around pandemic time, there's this beautiful series that you have done which is called Letters from the Wind. And tell us about that one.
So Letters to the Wind, actually, I used to go to my daughter. She lives in America and she works there. And I used to go to visit her, and she used to be working in the day and I used to be taking these long walks. And I was in Portland, Oregon. Now, Oregon is a beautiful state which is full of color during the autumn. And I was there at that time. And I used to look at these trees. They were just changing color like mad. And I was a black and white person, and I was getting so mesmerized by these trees. And then as I was walking, I used to feel a kind of a conversation in my soul. It was like a language, and I said, what is this? It was like a deep communication with silence. And these were a series where I did use a lot of my watercolor technique, but I used acrylic ink on paper, and I used again my Conti pencils and charcoal pencils, and I created these letters to the wind. And here my pen and ink came in with writing the letter.
Yeah, the text.
The text
came here.
Which the text kind of, it started to feel like a recognizable text, although it was all gibberish. And, and I was writing these sentences after sentences. And then I also felt there was so much connect with what I had done earlier in 2000 at Edinburgh Printmakers, when every time I connected to this silence and the communication became text oriented.
Like as if you were a medium to communicate a
either
message
that or it was because really we are all emotionally and as consciousness part of the consciousness, and whatever name we may give it, we can give it a divine name or we can just call it the universal spirit or whatever, but the consciousness is one. And so obviously I was resonating with that through my work, which is so beautiful, and through abstraction.
Right.
And what the great masters talk about, Then I started reading Rumi and Hafiz, and the Dalai Lama had already come in. And in 2005, there's a work called Passion, in which there is the text,
So that this automatic writing that we call in the art history parlance, you already probably had it, like you're saying, in 2005 work also.
Yes, and it was coming automatically to me, and I wasn't even recognizing it as writing. I was thinking of it as textures, but but the brush and everything would just move, and there was this sound and resonating with the word.
Great.
And in the new work, of course, this text is more, it's what is between the lines now for me. There's this all-pervading presence. The text again comes as the dynamic form, from the human body. But what is between the lines is the presence of the divine.
Yeah, right. So right now in your language, there is the text, current language, there is text, quite a lot of text we see, and along with the other textures and other materials and all that you have. So another interesting, very close to this is also the Mariners. That was also pretty much on the same kind of line. And now I want to ask you about this particular very large canvas that I loved seeing in India Art Fair this year in the Art and Heritage booth. And I think it is called Neither Form Nor Formless, and it had this bold sweep of brush, and also it had all of your quintessential elements that you have, the text and all. Tell us about that particular one. And also similar to that, also I found another work of yours, Tandav. So maybe you can, explain two of them or any one of them.
Okay.
Your choice.
So I'll pick up the strings from the Mariner's Tales. The
Okay,
Mariner's
yeah.
Tales and the manuscripts.
Yeah.
These were a short series which I did during the lockdown, and where I was visiting my English literature and reading The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. And I was feeling the mariner and the freedom, or the whole thing of the albatross and the heaviness of life on his human body. And here he was in his ship. So this is a diptych, two works together, on which the huge amount of text again appeared, and I created these two works using collage again. I also create, a lot of paper on the side, which I bring on top of paper. So I use washi paper, then I use rice paper, then I also create my own paper
works,
now.
yeah, create your own paper.
I burn them, and I do all kinds of layering with, transparent sheets, and create that thing. And that went into quite a nice, I had a nice time during the lockdown, because there was a lot of silence at that time, and there was a lot of peace and freedom, at that time. After that, I went into a series, because again silent, because I follow Muji, who is my spiritual guru and master. He lives in Portugal right now, and he follows the system of Ramana Maharishi in India. The thing of non-duality of existence, that there is only one existence, which is to do, the body is also a part of it, and so is the soul, and so is the consciousness. It's all a part of that existence, that one whole. There are no two here, And I was reading the Avadut Gita, which Muji loves to refer to, and he's a very friendly master to understand the nuances, of, and make it experiential, actually experience it. And so the Avadut Gita came up, and the Avadut became a character in my mind. And there's a new series on paper which started, it's black and white, and I have to still exhibit the Avadut. I haven't started exhibiting that part, but just before that is what you're talking about, neither form nor formless.
Right.
The canvas at the India Art Fair is actually called Neither Form Nor Formless. I am Nectarian Knowledge, Unchanging Bliss. And this is a quotation from the Avadut Gita, and this is the Avadut speaking about the existence,
That's beautiful.
And and there was a lot of freedom in that canvas, because it was a large size. Again, Mrs. Alana had wanted a large work from me, so I went on to canvas, and there's those bold brush strokes, which of course are lined for me, in their bolder form. And I use this tactile material, which I've used earlier also, is the pumice stone crush.
Right.
It's a stone crush which comes with an adhesive. It's all acid free, so it goes onto the canvas. Then I've used a lot of washi paper, and this time I used a lot of paper with threads in it. Right. And threads also I've done a series before called the threads, the quasi invisible threads, and they were black and white works with pen and ink. But here the thread became like a connect between the dynamic physical world and the metaphysical. And the divine, on my canvases. And also the repair, that how the patch, it darns us and repairs us, and the thread is a very, very important part of it, and how the divine or the goodness in the world repairs all of us.
Okay, as we go along in the life.
As we go along, yeah.
Also, it also gets repaired.
Repaired.
Okay, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
So, neither form nor formless. Interesting that you mentioned that, and you also mentioned the non-duality that you believe in. So, I had the pleasure of curating with your works in a recent exhibition of mine, and I would like to just you to talk about a couple of the works there that we had. There is this particular video installation that we loved it in our gallery, which is called Neither Form Nor Formless, and I feel it's kind of an essence of what you talk when you talk about non-duality. So explain a little bit about that, and
Okay, so that's the video. Lubna is my newest work. It's about 5 minutes right now, but it's going to grow either in small parts or it's going to grow longer.
Okay.
And it's the beginning. And here I speak about a metaphysical freedom. The freedom in me has moved from the body to the emotional freedom of the person, and now into the metaphysical space. And this video is based on nanotechnology and a little bit of physics, which I have understood from my nephew. I really feel that there is a silence in the scientific world, which is very similar to the silence in the spiritual world.
Yes, quantum physics, they say, is very much close to what we experience spiritually.
Yes.
Wow, that's great. It's a lovely journey that you gave us a small little capsule. One small question, because you're into abstract art. Sometimes abstract art is not very well understood by the common public. and it kind of goes into the silo of the art community or academician, and, to understand it better. So, what is your opinion about how to make this accessible to everybody? Anything that, what is your take on it?
Lubna, I really believe that abstraction is real and it actually is easily understood way more than figurative or the recognizable forms, because there are stories there. There's one particular story or a chain of stories, but abstraction gives you a huge canvas to just walk into. And real abstraction, whenever an artist is a real abstractionist, the viewer always resonates because
And
it is from
what do you
the
mean
soul.
by real abstractionist?
Real abstractionists mean an abstractionist that has come through the whole journey of the recognizable form and elimination and reached the
Right,
spirit.
right.
And the spirit is what resonates with the viewer. And people with open minds, when they walk into an abstract exhibition, there are people who react to the work exactly in the same way.
Right, right.
So I think abstraction is just fine.
That's great. That's a great way to put it, because abstraction is something that you respond with your senses.
Yes.
And you don't need to know anything, any background story for it. Yeah,
And there
that's
you
great.
go, the consciousness is one. No?
Right, right.
It flows in all of us in the same way.
So, one question I want to ask you, ma'am, that you've been practicing for the last 4 decades now. What is art to you?
Oh, beautiful. Art is life, my life, soul, life all around us. It is actually created from the creator's creations. That is art.
Wow. That kind of like really sums it up, really sums up your work and, knowing your work. And so I wanted to ask you something, that you've got a lot of accolades and over the last many years. So is there anything particular that, any appreciation that kind of touched your heart any time in your career in the last? There must be many, but something that you could share.
You've just sprung this question onto me. Okay, the first moment, actually, but very, very beautiful moment comes to my mind is with Mrs. Roshan Al-Kazi in the gallery, where Mr. Al-Kazi, wife of Mr. Ibrahim Al-Kazi, and they used to do a show called the Masterworks from the Al-Kazi collection every year after buying the work from the artist. And this was before the 2005 exhibition with them, one of the shows, and there was a buyer in the gallery and they wanted to buy one of my works which was hanging there, and Mrs. Al-Kazi held my hand and I knelt down next to her. I remember the moment, and she says, "We are not going to sell her work.
Okay.
She is our Nasreen Mohammadi.
Oh, wow.
Wait for more to come." That's what she said to him.
That's a huge compliment.
Oh, yes. And, it was so beautiful, so
and this
beautiful.
is like more than 20 years back.
Yes, I still remember her till today, and she always used to have my work hanging at home, etc.
Wonderful. So, one last question. So, what do you think about this platform, Chaibrary?
Oh, this is such a beautiful platform. And today when I came into the studio, I saw Ajay Zharotia's work. I went to him, and what a beautiful initiative by his sons. Great tribute to their father. And Ajay Zharotia, of course, as you all know, was a very well-known, distinguished painter of India, and very high up there in the hierarchy. And I was very young as an artist, and I'd gone to him for my first printmaking stint in silk screen printing at the College of Art. And from then on, we got to know each other, and he was always there with a big smile, always wanting to know what I'm doing now whenever we used to meet. And I wanted to once buy one of the ceramic bulls, which was at one of the exhibitions. It wasn't too expensive, but he told me, "तुम अपने पैसे रखो और अपने काम पे खर्चो, मैं तुमको दे दूंगा." And lo and behold, I got it as a present.
Wow,
so that was Jay. And thank you to Rakesh and Ajay for doing this. Beautiful for all artists.
It is so wonderful to talk to you. Such lovely anecdotes, so many beautiful stories. And whenever I speak with you, ma'am, I always feel that I'm kind of elevated a little bit spiritually. I always feel that I've learned something from you that I can take forward for my life, and that's a great compliment, I would say. It's always been more than art when we speak. So thank you so much for giving your time, and thank you so much for coming here and sharing your experiences with you.
Thank you so much, Lubna. Always a pleasure being with you. Always.
So this is our latest episode of Chaibrary. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for the love and support that you have given us. And do subscribe the channel. Press the bell icon for the latest updates. This is Lubna Sen signing off for now. Till we meet again, take care.